My wife betrayed me by secretly selling our family home for $350, $0, and funneling the money to her secret lover. Now she's denying everything and threatening legal action over custody and property rights. I never thought my wife would turn out to be capable of something so cold and calculated. The whole thing hit me like a freight train. I mean, I knew she was a little bitchy sometimes, but I never suspected she'd sell our family home behind my back, let alone for $350, $0, and then funnel that money straight into some guy's hands. The way I found out was so random, it still haunts me. It started with small things. Changing her phone password without telling me, hiding her texts, acting secretive whenever I asked about her day. She'd get defensive, throw some petty lie about needing privacy or being busy at work. I figured she was stressed or just being her usual bitchy self. But then one day, I noticed she was acting even more off. She was overly defensive about money, about where she was going, who she was talking to. One afternoon, I decided to check our bank account online, just to see if everything was normal. I've been suspicious for a while, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. When I logged in, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a withdrawal of $350, $0 from our account, marked as sale of property. I didn't even realize she'd been planning to sell the house. I mean, I knew she'd been acting weird lately, but I didn't think she'd do something this drastic without telling me. I immediately called her, but she didn't pick up. So I drove straight to her office, thinking maybe she'd be there, but she was. Instead, I found her at a coffee shop nearby, sitting with some guy I'd never seen before, tall, wearing expensive clothes and smirking like he owned the world. When she saw me, her face changed. Her eyes widened for a split second, then she plastered on that fake smile. I could see the guilt, the fear, all mixed up in her expression. I confronted her right then and there. I told her I knew everything: the money, the sale, the guy. Her reaction was classic. She lied, of course. Said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things that she was just talking to a client. She told me she'd never do something so stupid, and that I was just overreacting because I was insecure, but I could see through her bullshit. Her eyes kept darting around and her voice was shaky. That moment shattered something inside me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she betray me like this? We had a life together, 2 kids, a house we built from nothing. And she just sold it all for some guy's money and who knows what else. I was furious but also numb, like I was watching this all happen to someone else. I didn't even know who she was anymore. The emotional impact hit me hard. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept circling back to the house, to our kids, to everything we'd shared. I kept asking myself if I missed the signs, if I was blind to her lies. I felt betrayed, humiliated, like I'd been played for a fool. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I kept replaying that moment at the coffee shop, her fake smile, her trembling voice. It was like I was watching some bad movie, but it was real. I knew I had to make a decision. Part of me wanted to confront her again, demand answers, maybe even take her to court. But another part of me was just exhausted. I never thought I'd be in this situation, and honestly, I didn't know if I could trust her again. That house, that life we built, I felt like it was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. All I could do now was figure out what was next and brace myself for whatever came. The next few days were a blur of chaos. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face at that coffee shop, that fake smile hiding her guilt. I kept asking myself how the hell she managed to pull this off without me suspecting a thing. She always played the victim, the stressed wife, the one with too much on her plate. But now I saw her for what she truly was: a liar, a manipulator, someone capable of selling our home and funneling the money to her lover without a second thought. I started digging deeper. I hired a private investigator, something I never thought I'd do, but I needed proof. Over the next week, I watched her routines, tracked her phone, checked her messages, and what I found was worse than I imagined. She'd been meeting with this guy, Jake, for months. Secret dinners, late-night calls, even trips out of town. They'd been planning this for a long time. The pie confirmed it. She had been funneling the money from the house sale into a secret account. I could see the transfers, the payments, everything. She'd hidden every trace, but not well enough. I felt like I'd been punched again, but this time it was in the stomach. How could she do this? How could she betray me and our kids like this just for some guy's sex and money? I was furious, but also heartbroken. I loved her once, and now I was seeing her for what she really was, a liar and a thief. One night, I decided I had enough. I wanted to confront her face to face, get some answers. I waited until she came home late, probably from her affair, and then I blocked her in the driveway. She looked surprised, even a little scared. Good. I told her I knew everything and I wanted her to come clean. She tried to deny it, of course, said I was paranoid, that I had no proof. But I just looked at her and said, "You sold our house, you took our family's money, and you're lying to my face." Her reaction was classic. She started crying, saying she was stressed, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that it was all just a mistake. She claimed she loved me and the kids, that she only did it because she was desperate. She begged me to forgive her, to give her another chance, but I wasn't buying it. I looked at her with pure disgust. How could she be so callous? How could she betray everything we built just for some sex with Jake? The emotional fallout was intense. I felt betrayed, angry, and genuinely heartbroken. I'd trusted her with everything and she'd thrown it all away. I thought about the house, the memories, the future we'd planned. All gone. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her and make her see what she'd done. But I held back. I just told her to leave, that I needed time to think. I didn't want her near me anymore. Over the next few days, I started to process what had happened. I knew I had to make some tough decisions. The house was gone, the money was gone, and was gone too, at least emotionally. I realized I was going to have to fight for custody of the kids, to protect what little was left of our family. I reached out to a lawyer, started gathering evidence for the court. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, not just for the money she stole, but for the trust she shattered. It was a brutal wake-up call, but it also made me see how fragile everything really was. I'd always believed in honesty, in sticking by each other through thick and thin. Turns out, didn't share those values anymore. She'd become someone I barely recognized, someone I'd never thought would betray me so completely. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was determined to fight back, to reclaim what was left of my life and make sure she paid. For her betrayal, the aftermath of that showdown left me hollow. I spent days trying to piece everything together, how it all went so wrong, how I missed the signs, how I let her get away with so much. The house was sold, the money gone, and was effectively out of my life, at least for now. But the worst part was knowing she'd lied to me every step of the way, that she'd betrayed not only me but the kids' trust and our entire future. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and honestly I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I knew I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had to act, had to protect what was left of my family, even if that meant fighting dirty. I met with a lawyer that week, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Lisa who told me everything I needed to hear. She explained that I had a solid case for the property's fraudulent sale and the theft of our savings. Lies would only get her so far, especially once I presented the evidence I'd gathered: bank transfers, texts, witness statements. I was determined to hold her accountable, to make her understand that there are consequences for betrayal. Meanwhile, kept playing the victim. She kept insisting she was under so much stress, that she made a mistake, and that I was just overreacting. She even had the nerve to threaten legal action over custody, claiming I was an unfit father because I was accusing her falsely. She spun stories about how I was trying to ruin her life, how I was jealous and insecure. I couldn't believe the audacity of her lies. She looked me straight in the eyes and told me she'd fight me in court, that she'd make sure I never saw the kids again if I pushed her. That was the moment I realized I had to be strategic. I couldn't let her manipulate the situation anymore. I started documenting everything: her calls, her meetings, her lies. I also reached out to some friends and family who knew her well to get character witnesses. I knew she'd try to spin it all against me, but I had to stay calm and focused. The last thing I wanted was to give her ammunition to turn the court against me. One night, I decided to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I told her I knew about her affair with Jake, about the money, and about the house sale, that I had everything on paper now. Her face twisted in anger. She tried to deny everything, but I cut her off. I told her I was done playing her games. If she wanted to fight, I was ready. I made it clear that I was going to do whatever it took to protect my kids and get justice for what she stole from us. She screamed, called me a jealous, insecure husband who was trying to ruin her life. But I didn't care. I knew her real face now. She was a manipulative bitch who'd do anything for money and sex. I felt nothing but disgust. I'd loved her once, but she'd proven she was capable of anything. Lying, cheating, even selling our home behind my back. That house was more than just a building. It was our memories, our stability. Now it was gone, and she was trying to spin it like I was the one in the wrong. The emotional toll was heavy. I kept asking myself how I let it get this far, how I didn't see the signs, how I didn't protect myself and the kids better. I was angry at her, furious even, but I also felt a deep sadness. I'd lost my wife, my partner, maybe forever. I wondered if I'd ever trust anyone again after this. I'd been betrayed by someone I loved and trusted with everything. Still, I knew I had to be strong for me and for the kids. I couldn't let her win by breaking me down completely. So I made a decision. I'd fight her in court, but also emotionally, I'd start rebuilding my life. I'd focus on the kids, on making sure they knew they were loved and protected. I'd work on healing myself from this betrayal. It was a long road ahead, and I knew I'd face setbacks. But I also knew I'd come out stronger, because I had to. I couldn't let her destroy everything we'd built, not without a fight. The court hearing started about a month after I gathered all my evidence. Was doing her best to spin her story, claiming she was the victim, that I was trying to ruin her, and that I was unfit to care for the kids. She played the victim card hard, crying in court, claiming she was under so much stress that she was just trying to keep everything afloat. But I had the receipts, text messages, bank statements, witness statements, and I made sure every detail was laid out clearly. The judge listened carefully, and I could tell she saw through's act. The house sale, the secret accounts, the affair with Jake, all of it was laid bare. When I kept my tone composed, but inside I was boiling. I told the court about how I'd found out the truth, how I'd been betrayed by someone I loved, and how I was only fighting to protect my children from her manipulations. Defense was weak. She tried to claim she had no idea about the money or the house sale, that she was forced into it by circumstances she refused to explain. But I saw right through her lies. The evidence was too strong. The bank transfers proved she'd coordinated the sale, and her texts with Jake confirmed their affair. The court didn't buy her story, and I could see the frustration and anger in her eyes when she realized she was losing. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. The house was awarded to me and was ordered to pay back the stolen money with interest. She was also custody of the kids, at least for now, because the court found her to be untrustworthy and manipulative. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Justice was served, but my heart still ached for my children. I knew would fight back, probably try to appeal, but at least I had some peace of mind knowing I did everything I could. After the court decision, true colors came out even more. She threatened to turn the entire situation into a legal nightmare, claiming I was trying to ruin her life, and that she'd fight me over custody forever. She even accused me of domestic abuse, which was completely false, just another way to manipulate the system. I knew she was desperate, and I didn't want to give her that power. I stayed calm, kept my focus on the kids, and prepared for whatever she threw at me next. The emotional toll was enormous. I'd gone from feeling secure and loved to feeling betrayed and used. Every day was a struggle, trying to keep my composure around the kids while battling this storm inside. I felt so angry yet, but also incredibly sad. I missed the person I'd married. I kept asking myself how she could do this, how she could lie, cheat, and steal from her own family. That thought haunted me, but I also knew I had to keep moving forward for myself and for the kids. In the quiet moments, I started reflecting on everything I'd learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile. People can surprise you in the worst ways, and sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even if it feels like the odds are stacked against you. I realized that I'd been naive in believing that love and loyalty were enough. Turns out, some people are just good at hiding their true selves until it's too late. Now I'm focusing on rebuilding. I've moved out of the house, found a new place closer to work, and I'm trying to get my head straight. I've cut ties with no more contact unless it's about the kids. I'm trying to stay strong for them, to give them stability and love in the chaos. This whole ordeal has changed me forever, but I refuse to let her win completely. I'll keep fighting for my family, even if it's from a distance. Because at the end of the day, all I want is to protect my children from the damage she caused, and to find some peace within myself. The months that followed the court ruling were I never signed up for. Didn't go quietly into the night. She kept up her threats, her accusations, and her relentless attempts to turn the court of public opinion against me. She painted me as the villain, claiming I was trying to keep her from her kids, that I was manipulative and controlling. Honestly, it was exhausting. I knew she was desperate, and that her words were just another way to try and win in her twisted game. I focused on the practical side of things, getting the house cleaned up, finding a new place for myself and the kids, and making sure their needs came first. I made a point to stay calm and collected around them, even when I was burning with anger inside. I wanted to be the stable parent they needed, especially now when everything else felt so unstable. I also hired a therapist for the kids. They'd been through a lot, and I didn't want their emotional well-being to fall by the wayside. Meanwhile, was relentless. She hired her own lawyer, started filing motions to overturn the custody decision, and tried to drag me into endless legal battles. It seemed like every other week, there was a new court date, a new accusation, or a new attempt to undermine me. But I had prepared myself for this. I had the evidence, the witnesses, and the resolve to see it through. I wasn't going to let her destroy what little stability I'd managed to build for my children. One day, showed up unannounced at my new place, furious and crying. She claimed she wanted to see the kids, but her tone was aggressive. I told her she needed to go through the proper channels, that I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation anymore. She yelled at me, accused me of trying to keep her away. And then, out of nowhere, she said something that hit me like a punch in the gut. "You think you're such a good guy, but you're just a control freak. You're going to regret this." That moment made me realize how deeply she was spiraling. Her words weren't just about the kids or the house. They were about her losing control, about her inability to accept that she'd lost everything. I felt a mixture of anger and pity. Anger because she was throwing all her blame on me, and pity because I saw how broken she truly was underneath all the lies and manipulation. Over time, I started to accept that I might never get an apology from her or even a true sense of closure. But I also knew I couldn't keep living in the chaos. I focused on my own healing and on creating a better life for myself and the kids. I put my energy into work, into rebuilding trust with the children, and into making sure they knew I loved them unconditionally. It wasn't easy. Some days I felt like giving up, but I kept pushing forward. One thing I learned from all this is that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are. I've become more cautious, more aware of the red flags I once ignored. I've learned that some people are capable of doing terrible things, and sometimes you have to fight to protect yourself and your family. I've also realized that revenge isn't always about getting even. Sometimes it's about standing tall, doing what's right, and refusing to let someone else's darkness consume you. Now I'm in a better place. The legal battles aren't over, but I've gained a sense of peace, knowing I did everything I could, that I fought for my kids and for myself. I still think about sometimes about what could have been, but I refuse to let bitterness take over. Instead, I focus on the future, on creating a life where trust and honesty matter, and where my kids can grow up knowing they're loved and protected. Because, at the end of the day, that's what really matters. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole nightmare has changed me. I used to believe in the idea of forever, in the sanctity of marriage, in trusting someone with your heart and your life. Turns out I was naive. Betrayal shattered that illusion completely, but it also forced me to grow, to see what really matters and to understand that sometimes the only way to protect yourself and your kids is to fight back and never give up. The process was brutal: legal battles, emotional breakdowns, endless nights of questioning if I'd ever find peace again. But I did. Slowly, I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. I found strength I didn't know I had. I learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your dignity and making sure you don't let someone else's darkness consume you. I've come to accept that some betrayals are too deep to forget, but they don't have to define you. My kids are doing better than I could have hoped. They're resilient, loving, and trusting again because I've made it clear to them that they're safe, that they're loved, and that no matter what their mother did, I will always be there for them. I've learned to put their needs above my own pain, and that made all the difference. Seeing them laugh, play, and grow stronger each day reminds me that love, even after betrayal, can survive if you nurture it. As for, she's still fighting her own battles, trying to regain some semblance of control, but I've learned not to care about her anymore. I've cut ties, moved on, and focused on my future. What she did will haunt her, but I refuse to carry that burden. I've accepted that some things can't be fixed, only learned from. I hope she finds peace someday, but I won't be around to watch her spiral anymore. My priority is my children and myself now. This whole experience has taught me that trust is fragile, but resilience is stronger. That sometimes the only way to win is to stand your ground, fight for what's right, and never let someone's betrayal destroy who you are. I've learned to be cautious but not bitter, to forgive but not forget, and most importantly, to keep moving forward no matter how hard life gets. So here I am, years later, still standing. I've rebuilt my life from the ashes of betrayal, and I know I'll be okay. Maybe I'll never fully trust again, but I've learned that I can survive the worst, and in some strange way, I'm stronger for it. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar finds the courage to stand tall, to fight for themselves, and to remember that no betrayal is bigger than your will to heal. Because at the end of the day, your happiness and your integrity are what truly matter.